Hello and welcome to the Financial Services Exhibition. I'm Andrew Montlake, and with me now is Steve Griffiths, who is the Sales and Distribution Director for Kensington. Hi Steve.
Hi Monty.
I want to talk about first-time buyers at the moment. What do you think are the main issues facing the first-time buyer market at the moment?
I think first and foremost there's obviously a shortage really of the higher LTV products. We've got a very healthy market up to 75% loan to value and even on to 85%, but once you get above 85%, the 90s and particularly 95% products are a bit thin on the ground these days. So I think first and foremost having the actual deposit. Obviously there's rising house prices over the last few years, particularly where we are in London at the moment. So probably if you ask a first time buyer, that's their first challenge, is can they get enough deposit together to actually live in the type of property they need to live in the area that they need to live in.
Yeah, we've seen obviously savings rates have come down, so it's making it harder for them to save. Do you think the industry as a whole is innovating enough to help these buyers?
No, I think as well as the loan to value products, there's also the other issues that go typically with a first time buyer, especially these days where they very rarely have maybe had one stable address for a period of time and they reach early 20s and then move out to their first property. People getting on the ladder have probably had a very different journey to their first owned property, probably a lot of rental properties, they've moved around a bit, and I don't think necessarily the industry reflects that in the way that they would probably underwrite those type of cases. So credit scores particularly are pretty harsh in terms of the perhaps residential history of the customer and some of the other things that may go along with that because you're in that scenario you may not be able to build up a good credit profile in terms of obtaining other credits as well. So even for those higher loan to value products, what we tend to see is that once you get over 85% and towards 90 and 95, whilst the product might be there, it's still not that easy to get the product if you have a fairly typical first time buyer profile that involves maybe more than one or two addresses in the last 2 or 3 years and perhaps not a huge credit build up because they've been doing the right thing in actually trying to save their money rather than perhaps borrow money.
And so what are you doing at Kensington? What's your answer to all this?
Well, I suppose we've always prided ourselves that we have a manual lending decision within our criteria, so there isn't a credit score that counts the credit cards and the amounts of addresses or telephone bills or whatever that might be that dictates whether that customer is credit worthy of their mortgage. We have an experienced underwriter that does that, and that underpins pretty much everything that Kensington has done and will continue to do. We are looking to extend our LTV range, so this year we've moved from 85% to 90%, and that's a really popular product with first time buyers. You've got to have a really clear gifted deposit criteria that brokers understand as well, because a lot of that 10% deposit we see coming from bank of mum and dad, or
they've been very busy.
They have indeed. So you have to have that as an integral part of your policy, your product and your underwriting process, rather than getting into a very complicated scenario that again just causes another barrier perhaps post application once the application's been approved.
Yeah.
So just about being clear and transparent and having a decent high LTV product at a reasonable rate, no big fees on there, so there's no real barriers to entry to the customers wanting the product.
Okay, well thank you very much. Thanks for your time, Steve.
No problem.
And thank you.